Somewhere in the future, on an ordinary afternoon, someone is going to say your name out loud for the very last time. They won't know it's the last time, and after that, you will be gone. Completely. Not your body, that goes first, and not your grave, that comes second. This is the third death, the one almost no one warns you about. And unlike the other two, you can actually do the math on it. Tonight we are going to calculate, with cold and simple numbers, exactly how and when the universe is going to forget that you ever existed at all. The writer David Eagleman described it better than anyone. He said that you do not die only once, you die 3 separate times. The first death is the obvious one. Your heart stops. The body, the machine you spent your whole life living inside, goes quiet. The lights simply go out. The second death comes a little later. It is the day they lower that body into the ground, or scatter the ashes to the wind. The day you physically leave the world of the living for good. But the third death is the cruel one. It is the precise moment, somewhere far in the future, when your name is spoken aloud for the very last time. The last person who remembers you forgets, and then it is as if you were never here at all. Now here is where it gets almost unbearable, and yet strangely beautiful, because that third death is not random. It follows a curve, and we can actually do the math. Start with the biggest number there is. Demographers estimate that, across the entire span of human history, about 117 billion people have ever been born. 117 billion separate lives. Now ask yourself one simple, brutal question. How many of them can you name? Not the famous handful, the ordinary ones, the vast, silent 117 billion. You cannot name a single one of them, not one. More than 99.9% of every human who ever lived is now utterly, completely forgotten. No name, no face, no trace at all. And that is the default. That is the normal, expected outcome of a human life. Being remembered is the rare exception. Being forgotten is the quiet rule that governs almost every person who has ever breathed. But let us bring it closer, let us make it personal, and calculate your curve. We can do it with one simple test right now. In your head, name your 8 great-grandparents. All 8 of them, their full names, what they did for a living, what their voices sounded like, what it was that made them laugh. You can't. Almost no one can. These are people whose blood runs literally inside you, who were alive maybe 100 years ago, and they are already gone. A few names on a document if you are lucky, often not even that. This is the mathematics of forgetting, and it is shockingly, brutally fast. It takes only about 3 generations. 3, you, your children, and their children. After that, you quietly dissolve. Think about what that truly means. Your great-grandchildren, people who will carry your DNA, whom you might even hold in your arms as babies, will almost certainly not know your name. They will feel absolutely nothing when they hear it. You will be a blank to them, exactly as blank as your own great-grandparents are to you right now. So now we can actually do it. We can estimate, roughly, the date of your third death. You live your life. You die. For a generation or two, the people who loved you keep saying your name, at dinners, at holidays, in half-told stories. Call it 50, maybe 60 years of being genuinely remembered. Then those people die too, and their children, who only half knew you, mention you less and less. And their children do not mention you at all. Roughly 80 to 100 years after your death, the very last casual "oh, she used to say" is spoken into a room, and that is the end. So somewhere around a single century from the day you die, on some grey and unremarkable afternoon, your name leaves a human mouth for the final time. You could almost mark it on a calendar. That is the math of being forgotten. But what about the famous ones, you might ask? The ones who escape the curve? Surely they beat it. They barely do. Out of all 117 billion people, the number whose names survive even a single 1,000 years is a few thousand, a rounding error, a fraction of a single percent, and even they not really remembered. We know the name Cleopatra, but the actual woman, her fears, her private thoughts, the real sound of her laughing, died her third death 2,000 years ago. What survives is a costume, a word on a page, not a person person. Even the pharaohs built entire mountains of stone just to scream their names into the future. And now we walk past their tombs and cannot even pronounce them. The pyramids are, in the end, the most expensive failed attempt to cheat the third death in all of human history. Welcome to Zao. Tonight we are standing right at the edge of our own forgetting, doing the cold arithmetic of oblivion, and asking whether it is a horror or quietly a mercy. So sit with the full equation: 117 billion people, almost every one of them erased, a personal half-life of only about 3 generations, a third death arriving roughly 1 century after your final breath. Everything you are doing right now, building, posting, striving, screaming into the feed to be seen and saved, is on a long enough timeline an attempt to bend that one curve, to be the exception, and the math says gently but firmly that you almost certainly will not be. Your photographs will become unlabeled faces in a drawer that no one ever opens. Your voice, recorded on a dozen devices, will sit on dead servers that no one ever logs into again. Your entire inner universe, every private joke, every secret ache, closes forever the instant your third death arrives. And here is where the math turns unexpectedly into something that feels almost like peace. Because if being forgotten is the shared fate of 117 billion people, of kings and saints and your own beloved great-grandparents alike, then it cannot be a punishment. It is not a failure. It is simply the deepest thing you share with every human who has ever lived. You are not going to be forgotten because you were not enough. You are going to be forgotten because that is what happens to everyone. You are joining the largest, quietest, most patient family in the whole universe. And maybe that strange fact actually sets you free. If the far future will not remember your name no matter what you do, then the desperate striving to be remembered was always the wrong game. The numbers were simply never on your side. The only thing the entire equation leaves untouched is the present. The single variable you actually control is not whether you are remembered. It is what you are right now, while your name is still warm in living mouths. There is one more number, and this one points the other way. Think of all the people whose third death you yourself have caused, the ones you were the very last to remember, and then, one ordinary day, simply didn't. A teacher who quietly changed your whole life, a stranger who was kind to you once, a grandparent whose face is already softening into a blur. You are, right now, a graveyard of last rememberings. People are dying their third death inside you, silently, all the time. So perhaps the real question was never how to be remembered yourself. Perhaps it is this: who are you still keeping alive, and whether, for the brief time the math allows, you are worth keeping alive inside someone else. The curve itself is fixed. About a century after your death, your name goes silent. The 117 billion already proved it. The empty branches of your own family tree already proved it. There is no cheating it, and there never was. But the curve says nothing at all about the area underneath it. It cannot measure what it was actually like to be near you, the warmth or the harm, and that is never remembered as a name. It is passed on silently in how the people you touched go on to touch others, a current with no signature. You will be forgotten. The math on this is certain, but the very same math reveals the only real immortality a human being ever had. Not your name surviving, but your effect surviving, unnamed, untraceable, flowing quietly forward through people who will never once know that it started with you. So here is the final calculation to carry with you tonight. You get roughly 1 century of remembered existence in total, a single flicker, and then you join the 117 billion in the great silence. The question was never how to escape that. You can't. The only question that the math leaves open is what, exactly, you pour into the flicker while it lasts. Maybe the goal was never to be remembered forever. Maybe it was only ever to make the part of you that flows on, the part with no name at all, genuinely worth flowing. So tell me, in the comments, whose name have you said recently that almost no one else still says? Say it once more, here, tonight. Hold their third death off just a little while longer, and know that I read every single one. Because the strangest truth in all of the math is this: the only way to fight being forgotten was never to be remembered yourself. It was always only to remember someone else.